Welcome to Valheim. Valheim is an open-world RPG where you take on the role of a Viking, fighting to survive while questing to kill a slew of mythical beasts. Excited for the adventure that awaits, I set to work, making my characters, and prepare to... Oh, hey, what's up? I was just about to start Valheim. What do you mean there's a problem? No, this was the plan for today. What do you mean it's not working?
It's a journey that has many markers. We're born.
Well, what do you suggest I do?
We learn to walk.
Wildermyth?
We graduate school. We may go on to a job.
No, nothing's wrong with Wildermyth. It's just, that wasn't the plan.
We ride a bike. We go to school.
Fine. We'll change plans. So, bad news. When I'm streaming, the opening cutscene to Valheim kinda bricks my computer, so... Welcome to Wildermyth! Wildermyth is a story-rich, choice-based RPG, which is a list of character traits that I stole directly from its Steam page. Wildermyth has a plethora of unique campaigns varying in story, length, and difficulty, and for this I chose the Ulstric campaign, a 3-chapter story where you and your allies are slated against an army of petrifying Gorgons. Which just so happens to be the tutorial campaign. At the start of the game, I was asked to make not one, not two, but 3 original characters. First, I set to work making the strapping young lad that was destined to become my fighter.
You know what I've come to the realization of? I'm kind of just making Shaggy.
If I'm being completely honest, I didn't want to just blatantly steal both Shaggy's name and appearance. I mean, at this point, it kind of feels like an overused joke. So I just settled for stealing his look. And then, for no particular reason whatsoever, I gave him the completely original and wacky name, Norval Rogers, which is not a reference to anything. Do not look it up. Fuck you. Following Norval came the creation of the Great Huntress, Magnolia Fuckwad. And finally, because of suggestion from chat, I named my mage George. And then proceeded to have their last name be Clooney, and make them a woman. And with that, George Clooney, the Dark Mage, was born. Just like that, a party was formed, and finally, I was ready to set out into the unknown.
Chapter 1 started off rough, as I immediately realized my mistake in giving Norval the appearance that I did.
Like zoinks, man. How long would they believe me if I pretended I was lost? Or how long would they believe me if I pretended I lost my voice?
It was bad. Like, bad. In fact, it was so bad that I almost immediately gave up on it and just spoke like a robot for the rest of the stream. Either way, as I approached my home, I noticed something horrible. Fire and smoke rose from the buildings, and instantly I knew I needed to hurry to see if my friends were alright. Looks like she's starting fires again. Again? I feel like the entire town being on fire is probably not something for you to just be like, oh, Magnolia. You know, considering it might be her fault, I feel a lot less panic, because, like, if Magnolia dies, it's her own fucking fault. Even still, I run for the town. Quickly, I make my way to Magnolia's house, where I'm promptly yanked inside, handed a frying pan, and thrown back out into a fight with a rampaging beast that has caused the fires. Oh yeah, and Magnolia's there too. The crazy beast, a mutant deer full of anger and hatred, charged at us, quickly throwing us into a violent melee. This fight went about as poorly as it could have for a literal tutorial fight. Magnolia whipped out the Bethesda accuracy and missed an 85% chance shot, and then the beast completely ignored Norval to follow her, taking half of her HP in a single hit. Like, sure, Norval was able to run up and one-shot it right after, but still, this did not bode well for the rest of the run. On top of that, I noticed something. Or more, I noticed someone was missing. Where's George? And now, I wait, I suppose. That's right. For some reason, George found herself stuck in some old-ass tower with a raging beast just outside her door. Trapped, she waited, hoping that someone would come to her rescue, until she found a peculiar book, The Wildermyth, which obviously has to be important because the game's named after it, or it's named after the game. Whatever. Within its pages was a catacomb of ancient stories, and as George read through them, she was imbued with its powers. With the help of a trusty spoon, she found that she was now capable of magic, a feat previously thought impossible. With her new powers, she slew the beast at her door with bullshit magic that came down from the rafters. Then, using her powers, she fought through the tower, escaping just as Norval and Magnolia arrived. Finally, the party was complete, and with their reunion, it was time to give themselves a name. Being the mature individual that I am, my first instinct was to name my team the Cool Kids Club. But realizing that might be a bit problematic, I decided to settle for the much safer Team. And now that all the heroes had combined, I finally got a chance to fall into the game's core gameplay loop. For Chapter 1, I was given 2 objectives: search all the land to crush the rising ranks of monsters and beasts, and then investigate the petrifying threat that had assaulted a nearby town. During my very first scouting mission, though, I found some sort of weird special event. Apparently we have met the 3 muses. Not 3 muses, the 3 fates. Unless I'm wrong. That looks like 3 and the fates. I might have been right with the fucking muses.
This music, it calls to me. We should join them.
Join them? That seems like a profoundly bad idea. They have no faces. I mean, she doesn't really have one either. Most of her face is not visible. Let's do some dancing. Yeah, we're probably once all travelers. No, fuck it. Let's dance. Come on.
Hey, come on.
I've got 2 left feet. I'm better as an audience member. Nah, Shaggy. It is time. Norval Rogers. As soon as George stepped between the stones, music washes over her. Unlike anything she's ever heard before, and yet its melodies seem familiar. Were not these drums always beating in the time with her heart? Had she not always found herself absently humming this tune? Okay, this might have been a mistake. She flows among them, a beam of starlight, woven with the others. Please don't die. There is a moment when the whirring comes to a nearly frenzied pace, when the dancers are spinning, and spinning, orbiting, and nearly carried away. Around her, the spectators cry out in adulation. George hears her own voice joining them. With a crashing crescendo, the music falls suddenly silent. A voice like water trickles over the stones and speaks. You honor me well, George. She stands still, humbled and awed. At her feet, something blue glimmers, a small book, worn with age. For a moment, the constellations on its covers sparkle, and then it lies quiet and still, waiting. I'm gonna guess events like this are pretty rare, since it's the only one I got this entire mission, but hey, weird book. Anyways, not knowing what to do with said weird book, I set to work on clearing out the monsters that had infested the continent. And can I say, I fucking hate this game's AI. Every creature would run right by my fighter like he was invisible, and got it straight for my squishy backline, meaning I would watch an enemy that had just been hit by a mace run around its wielder to attack an archer that hadn't even shot at it, making positioning much more of a nightmare than I thought it'd be. That being said, I was eventually able to figure out what the book does, and after some boring-ass cutscene dedicated to translating it, George learned that it was a map to the Glimmering Pools. Slowly, the pool begins to glow. I did not read the other part of that. Oh. Alright, I must admit, that's pretty spectacular.
Now what? Now, one of us goes in. There's enough power to grant one of us something special.
Being that George found and translated the book, I thought it fitting that she got the power. Hey, it was your book. They gave it to you. You did the things. And you have decided to strip. Well, here goes. I don't think anything... Fucking ascending. Oh, look, now your hair is sparkle. Did that do anything? You just now have sparkly hair. What did that do? It did nothing. For now. And with that, we went back to work, slaying monsters without mercy, till finally we had killed them all. Or, well, almost all of them. We were finally ready to investigate Stone people. We were ready to investigate stone people. We come into town to see its people have become nothing but statues. Perfect, picturesque versions of the living beings they'd once been. We weren't given long to process the horror that laid before us, for just moments after approaching, the strange roar of monsters thundered through the town. Quickly, Norval ran ahead while the girls covered his flank and burst down the door to a large barn nearby. But what awaited him on the other side was a deadly Gorgon, the very beast that had petrified all the poor people of this town. To make matters worse, a deadly roe had followed him, blocking his exit. Knowing he stood no chance with his escape route blocked, Norval turned and struck down the beast, but its distraction proved fatal. While his back was turned, the Gorgon struck Norval with a powerful blow. As he felt his body failing, Norval knew that with his demise, his friends would soon fall. In one last act, he selflessly put all of his strength into his last attack, striking the beast with an equally fatal blow. And like that, the battle was over. The rest of the monsters fled as their leader fell, but he was not alone in his death. Beside him lay the lifeless body of Norval Rogers, a true hero who had sacrificed himself fighting to the bitter end. And the game promptly forgets about him. I mean, there's this whole cutscene after killing the boss dedicated to the moments that follow its death, and not once do George or Magnolia even mention Norval. He died for them, and he doesn't even get a tear? These ungrateful wenches don't deserve even an ounce of the compassion he gave them. My mans deserve better. Oh, and also Magnolia gets some weird vision and scar. They find a weird shaped thing, and George's hair magic spreads to her foot. Whoop-de-doo. The game doesn't really explain it well, but somehow during the 11 years of peace that followed Norval's death, George discovers that Ulstrix, the main Gorgon that this whole story is named after, is searching for some sort of spear to use as a symbol to unite all the Gorgons. I don't really know how plausible the claim that a single spear could unite an army is, but either way, my new objective is to beat him to it. Quickly, I made 2 new allies, Gindel the fighter and Vilken the assassin, and with their help, we got to work searching for that sacred spear. Due to the time-crunching nature of the second chapter, not much really happened prior to our discovery of the spear. This might seem a little anticlimactic compared to last chapter, but boom! End of chapter boss fight. Before us stood a giant monster of stone and magic, the guardian of the spear. Gindel and Vilken charged in as Magnolia and George took position in the back. Of course, it didn't matter that my melees were in front, because the beast promptly ignored them and ran straight for George and Magnolia. Which actually proved to be a fucking mistake for that thing, since it put it in the prime position for a shitstorm of attacks. I mean, this thing was pelted by pitchforks, arrows, magic rocks, and dagger strikes. In literally one turn, it went from nearly full health to actually just fucking dead. And like that, the spear was ours. But that couldn't be all, right? I mean, this was supposed to be a huge, chapter-ending fight. Surely it couldn't have been passed that easily, right? Just moments after the Guardian had fallen, a swarm of Ulstrix's monsters began to pour into the cave, forcing us to make a daring escape. And by force, I mean mildly inconvenience, and by daring, I mean trivial. I think I literally only took 1 hit during this escape, and that's because the raccoons, for some reason, have a ranged attack. Anyways, like that, we escaped, and the enemy's treasure was ours, completing Chapter 2 in quite literally a third of the time it took to complete Chapter 1. Oh, also, in the piece that follows our latest quest, George and Magnolia's child becomes old enough to join the fight. Now, you may be wondering to yourself, wait a minute, when did they have a kid? Aren't they both women? How did they have a kid? Who's been raising the kid during their adventures? I really wish I could answer those questions, but I don't know, because the game literally never fucking mentioned they had a kid before this. Anyways, with Chapter 3 came rain. Lots of rain. Biblical levels of rain. And with biblical levels of rain comes biblical levels of flooding. Turns out, according to these weird cave people that showed up at our house, it's time to finally take the fight to Ulstrix, because he decided to stop trying to invade our land, since that's not been working, and instead petrify a god to cause a flood that will kill us all for him. You may be wondering, how exactly do you de-petrify a god? Well, I got a treat for you. I call it root beer. God damn it, we're saving God by force-feeding him fucking root beer? Fuck me. Why? Why are we saving the world with fucking root beer? Ah! Fuck! It's not even that good. That's right, we're saving God with fucking root beer. Oh. Anyways, after getting the magical root beer from these complete strangers that are totally safe to trust, we set off to unstone a god and confront the bastard that is literally trying to drown a continent. Upon entering the Catherine altar, the home of the god, we find the place swarming with monsters, but we're able to defeat them pretty easily with our much superior might. Strangely enough, Ulstrix is nowhere to be found. But at the very back of the map, we're able to find the divine statue. With great care, George pours the root beer over the statue, and it doesn't work. That's right, we poured root beer on a fucking statue, expecting it to become a god. Honestly, I don't even know why I'm surprised that it didn't work. Of course it wouldn't. Only an insane person would think that it would. That being said, this statue did turn out to be the perfect trap for our foes, because as we stood with our thumbs up our ass trying to resurrect God with some good old A&W, Ulstrix and his forces had surrounded us, and now they came in for a fatal strike. As the combat started, we realized there was no end to Ulstrix's numbers, and the only way to make it out of here alive was to cut off the danger at its source. As forces came in from every angle, we made a mad dash for the bastard, praying that we got to him before his minions got to us. To my horror, our forces became split, as George, Magnolia, and their daughter, whose name I never actually learned, became surrounded by beasts, and Gindel and Vilken broke through to Ulstrix. It was a bloody shitstorm of a battle. Panic set in as both George and Magnolia were mortally wounded, knocking them out of the desperate combat. Even still, knowing that they had Ulstrix in their sights, Gindel and Vilken went to work. First, Gindel assaulted him with 3 heavy blows, wounding him and shredding his armor with the very spear he had sought to claim for himself. Seeing that Ulstrix was distracted, Vilken slipped up behind him and struck him with a finishing blow, and like that, Ulstrix was defeated. And with his death, the monsters that had backed him fled, and the day was saved. With his powers gone, the god quickly returned to normal, bringing an end to the floods. And like that, we had saved the world.